We are living in a turbulent world. I think you may agree. I'm 75, looking back my early days, adulthood, and on. I see the change externally, but the main topic here is how we know ourselves better internally and how we develop as a human and to die and what to make the most of it to live life well. So the way I want to structure this talk is about the progression from the birth and how our brain has been developed and it changes over time. So that by knowing the macro picture, so to speak, of how things happen within ourselves, we may be able to utilize our talent better to live our life well. So, first thing I want to talk about is the comparing human to animals or even plant, for example. What makes us different is that we have this brain developed over time where we use the words and logic, and that made us to be so successful as species on the earth, except that we may see some limitation because of the limited resources and how better to communicate with each other and moving forward. But leave that discussion aside for the time being. Let's study how we have been progressing. The thing I mentioned about the difference between the human and animals or the plants is our brain. When we're born, we don't have any words or logic. But the logic is not in the human brain part, but the nature's way has been functioning from the way we get this input from the eyes, ear, nose, and tongue, and the skin, and things like that, as much as all the animals may do. Maybe the plants may be more limited, but essentially there's an innate process happening to make us alive. In human case, however, as soon as we are born, and possibly before that, due to its DNA, we have this ability to use the words and logic that's developed over time. And when we are born, we notice that, well, it's natural that we realize because of the parents and others talking with each other, talking to us when we are baby. When we look at them, you don't understand what's going on. You have no idea, so that the early experience in our life we don't remember, because there's no way of detecting and locating how things happen, because the brains are being developed. So after 2-3 years, by that time, we start to use or understand the word, meaning of the word, and how they use with certain logic. So we start to be talking something and start to talk with each other, smile, respond. So the emotion get developed, but the logic and the words, meaning of the words, and the way to converse are developed in those early ages. According to the study of neuroscience, this will last until maybe teenage years or even a little longer to develop this operating system like a computer, so that we can understand the protocol operating language and the logic. Like using the computer, we start to use the brain. But if you go back early state, before the words and logic, what we only recognize is what's going on. And from that, we get the sense of what to do, what's dangerous, how to avoid, what's good to live. But not the logic of the world, but more of a deep-rooted sense of us being alive like animals. That's the foundation. And if you think about that state of what's going on, we are very open. There's no linear logic, A and B and C and cause and effect. But the intuition took place, but still being able to learn what's dangerous and what's not, and how you can feel happy in terms of getting food, connecting to people, skinship, all that kind of stuff. So if I see that picture in my imagination compared to the adulthood where we have the operating system of word and logic, the state in those early days, a happy period because you don't have the cause and effect logical relationship, but the intuition. So you're living in the now, smiling and sad, very impromptu and intuitive, because there's not much logic. But the mothers and fathers and surrounding will teach you, or watching on TV, or even the computer, or iPhone these days, young people start to get the sense of words, logic, meaning, and how people respond. So we get this imprint taking place early in our age without us knowing about it, that you cannot recollect, but it's deep in our operating system, and we are very intuitive. But over time, we start to learn the words, the meaning of the words, and the logic. So we start to construct, if I may use the word, linear logic. If A and B, then C happens. Things like that. And those logic didn't exist as in the computer language algorithm in the early age. The algorithm is very much of a nature's way, no differentiation from the plants, animals. Or if there is, there's not much difference. But because of this newly developed talent of words and logic that we can use, the algorithm, we start to configure things and being able to talk. So the difference when we start to do that is that previous to that state was purely or mostly intuition, like animal, to make you alive. But after we developed the logic words and how to construct a sentence and communicate, it's like beyond the intuition, mathematical expression, A, B, C, X, Y, Z, relationship. But the relationship among those construct of the logic and the words are linear. What I mean by linear is that it's a continuous process of logic and to make sense out of it. And there are many of those developed to construct the image of the world, how it's operating, and when you do this, this happens, things like that. Prior to that, there's no logical process in the sense of this algorithm in our being, in early age, but just the animalistic, intuitive sense beyond the linear process of ABC, but more of a experiential insight that you learn. It's a skinship kind of thing. But that is very important to learn to be creative. But added to that creativity that we had inherently developed, we have this new algorithm process, like superimposed. So my explanation to that is that because of this intuitive sense, is not in the framework of words and logic. It's animalistic, intuitive. So that's the phase or the state earlier. And the later, after say teenage years or more, we have more solid structure to live in the society well. So that makes us different from the plants and animals. Animals may have some sense of communication, but again, it's intuitive. And it's in the moment. But the logic implies also the element of the time, relationship, and all that complexity that we start to develop. We start to use the tools. And because of that, and even creating more tools and more algorithms, humans develop the skill much more so than the slow intuitive process of animals and plants. So that's the evolution. And from the teenage to 20s and 30s. But if I look at the age 25, 30, 35, there's a moment of very creative sense of this intuition and the newly developed logical algorithm that may have interfacing with each other to make it sort of an interesting combination, dancing of those two. I call it the brain and the other body or heart. So there are the two universes. One is intuitive, the other is logical. Logic by itself is very linear, A, B, C, X, Y, Z. Intuition is beyond the word logic, as if nature's way is prevailing. You can say one is more artificially, humanly developed, the other one is more nature's way. It has been and will be so far as we live. Because without thinking, we digest food, the heart pumps the blood, we inhale, exhale, and lots of things happen on its own without the use of the brain. And we need to kind of appreciate that, because without that, you cannot live well. You cannot use your brain to pump the blood, fight against some wound. Those are the areas that the nature takes care of in the body or heart space. That was already been there from the beginning of birth, and will continue. But because of the overlay of the brain, the human society start so much depend on this words and logic, and it's becoming more and more complex, and that causes additional burden for us. So if I use the Bible's analogy, we used to be living in the Garden of Eden, because of the eating of the knowledge. That's the original sin, to cause us feel suffering, painful, because you can think of all sorts of things by itself, even forgetting what is the basis of our life and the childhood, happy, innocent, animal-like, being alive moment to moment kind of a sense. So in that, I said 25, 35, that's the kind of years I feel, if you look at the creative work is done by mathematicians and physics and Nobel Prize winners, those people come up with very intuitive, creative idea. And after the age 35, 40, and so on, they would be executing more of how to bring out those ideas into action and grow with that notion of acquired knowledge and creative thought combined, so that we can make a difference using the fire to the point of nuclear and AI and beyond. What's interesting, since I mentioned about AI, is that the AI may be taking over some of those algorithms. I use the word linear logic, A, B, C, X, Y, Z, and cause and effect, because there's so much information to process, and it's humanly becoming impossible, and the suffering out of the Garden of Eden that we experience, a confused state of whether we should go A or B or C, because previously we didn't have to think. The nature told you what to do. Run or be together, right or left, moment to moment. So it's a burden of using the brain and consuming energy. That's how the brain consumes. I don't know what's the percentage, huge amount of energy that we produce, we need to eat, will be consumed in this brain activity. But still, as we can see this turbulent world we live, things get very chaotic. So some may want to go back to the Garden of Eden, and that's the kind of a transient process that if we can succeed in using the AI, maybe we can download some of those linear logic and confusion to be delegated by the AI, so that we can have a much better balance of the using the brain but listening to the heart or body and finding the mission to live. Such was the concept that I put in my book, Result from the Heart. And the Dalai Lama commented that we need to have a connection to the heart when we use the brain, instead of forgetting the nature, the heart telling us what to do, intuition, but overridden by the logic. Let me stop here about the state of that confusion. If we leave the brain out when we are confused, but connect it to the heart, it's if to see the whole memory structure we got, which is not in the shallow part of the brain, but the deeper part of what we have accumulated over years of our life experience. That's how lots of intuition, creative idea may take place. Instead of banging your head, A, B, C, X, Y, Z, with linear logic and so much information, we let the source, our core of our being, from the heart, the nature's way, to take over. So that's the kind of stuff that I see me at old age, and you, if we're young, will go through the process so that you have a good balance, and toward the end of your life, you have a better understanding of relationship of original being of who we are to those tools that we acquire, and have a balanced life. I think my time may be limited. The battery is going down, so I'll stop here. But the point of this is about the journey of our growth and relating to the state of where we are. We may find the right balance, utilizing the best of what we got. Thank you.